Welcome, everyone, to this evening's presentation on nurturing inner peace. Thank you for being here. Those of you joining Mary and I here at the Information Center, and those of you joining us online. My name is Mark Mann. I'm the Director of Programs and Institutes for the Catholic Information Center. The ministry of the center creates spaces for dialogue, encounter, and community at the intersection of faith and life. And our hope of our witness is that people of all walks of life will experience the good news of God's reign with joy. We're celebrating 75 years this year of Paulist ministry here in West Michigan. We are at service to the Diocese of Grand Rapids, and obviously with our Zoom link, well beyond. Mary Wcisel is a practicing spiritual director, currently working as a process graphic designer at CommunityWorks, Inc. And there she creates images and materials for contemplative planning and discernment processes, both for national and international religious communities. She has also served in parish ministry as a director of pastoral care and as a coordinator of youth ministry. And throughout her ministries and busy family life, eight grandchildren now?
Eight.
Yeah, 8. Woohoo! Throughout her ministry, she's come to realize the essential need for practicing mindfulness and returning to the place of inner peace. Please help me welcome Mary Wcisel.
Thank you. Oh, I think you said it all pretty well. I can't add anything much to that, except that I'm just really happy to be here. And, these are the kinds of things I was invited to do. And I just think, well, I was asked and I'll say yes, and let it be whatever God creates. So, let's begin. I'd like to begin with prayer, and then we'll take a minute to just introduce the rest of you to each other. So let's just take a moment, recognizing the goodness that has brought you here to this moment, in this place, at this time, with each other. Father in heaven, we thank you for bringing us together in this moment. We come from different places, but all of us seeking to quiet our hearts and minds, to find solace and peace in the midst of all that we experience in this life. We ask that you send us your spirit of peace and understanding. Show us the way to all that you offer. Teach us the way to the center of our very selves, the place where you reside and await our companionship and our love. Amen.
Yeah.
Okay, well, as we were going around and what I was hearing as a common theme of just of realizing and recognizing that life can get very, very busy. It can get very, very full, and not always full of the best of things. And so it's important, I think, to nurture that part of ourself that is capable of being at peace and discovering how to find our way back to that when we lose our way in the middle of a day or a moment or a life. So, and it is a practice of something ongoing that we do need to nurture, because if we don't, we suddenly find ourselves in moments that we think we've gone so far. It's like all of a sudden we find ourselves yelling or, panicking or worrying or all of these other things. And I think right now our world is so full of that. It's very full of that. So if you watch, any kind of commercials and things, so many things, it's like you've got fidget toys for kids and you've got 20 different ways to be mindful or meditate, or it's a big business right now, which tells us that there's a great need. There's a great need. The human spirit is struggling with where we are right now. And I think part of it, the gift of technology and everything, but it also puts us in touch with so much more than we've ever been in touch with before in any given moment. So we not only know what's happening with our neighbors and the people, if you see the news once a day at 6 o'clock, now we have it 24/7, and we know not just what's happening in our neighborhood, but all over the world. So we have an awful lot to take in. And I think the human spirit struggles with that. because we're on overload, and only God can really manage that much. It's certainly not us. So tonight I'm hoping that we can kind of just begin a conversation about, how do we bring ourselves into that place that we're invited to, the peace that only God can give. So I chose this quote by Thomas Merton. Our minds are like crows. They pick up everything that glitters, no matter how uncomfortable our nests get with them, all that metal in them. So, it's kind of like that. It's like we pick up all of these things and we keep putting more and more and more. And it's even that way with activity, or it's that way even with the things we want to do, the scrolling at night to try to fall asleep. So, we go back to scripture in Matthew where Jesus told his disciples, go to your inner room, close the door, and pray to your Father in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will repay you. So it's that reminder to meet God in the silence and in the quiet, and to somehow disengage from all of the things that are pulling on us. And that can be easier said than done. So it's really a question of what are we hungering for? I mean, where we feel very full, and yet at the same time, there's an emptiness and a hunger within us. And it's trying to identify what it is that we're hungering for. So if we look at that sense of being full, and at the same time, feeling that emptiness of hunger, I want to just take a moment to kind of consider, what is it inside of you right now that you might be hungering for? What is it you're really hungering for? And I want us to consider too, what inner peace is, because I think sometimes it gets confused with a peaceful moment, because we can have a day with no peaceful moments and still have inner peace. But so it's kind of like, how would you articulate that difference? Does anyone want to share a thought about that? What is the difference between inner peace and a peaceful moment?
We had an incident in Florida that.
Sammy.
Oh, we'll wait for the microphone. If you want to leave it on this side, we can pass it back and forth.
We had an incident in Florida. We had two different sets of kids with us at different times, which was wonderful. But the first two was my oldest, or my son, our only boy, and his wife. And we're sitting in, it was Super Bowl, and he had more drinks than he should have. But we're all sitting there in the condo looking at each other and doing memories, old memories. And we're all giggling. All of a sudden, he just drops his drink and just kind of freezes. And we still don't know what it was, but the three of us, his wife and Bob and I, stood right up, And so the next we took his blood pressure, and he didn't even remember it. So anyway, he went to bed. So the next day his doctor says he needs to go to check in at the ER, which makes sense. Well, he's fighting this the whole way because he don't want to do that, but he's doing it because his wife and his mother are going to let him, or Bob. So I end up going with him with my bathing suit on and cover up in a sweater. So it was really attractive because he came down to the pool and said, I'm going.
Okay.
So the point of this whole story that much is I managed to do all that and not freak out, not get all upset, because at this point in my life, I have so much more inner peace. And that's a blessing,
Mm-hmm.
So.
He's looking at me. Okay.
Okay.
He knows what's happening.
Yeah, I think that in some regard, life, as we go through it, we want to believe the lies that society tells us, you know, like the ones like, I'm not good enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not beautiful enough, or I'm just not enough, right? And I think that even though we have some peaceful moments where those thoughts aren't in our heads, they might still be there. But inner peace is the time when we can just release that, surrender it, and let it go. That's where I find the inner peace.
And we're gonna hear from Kathy. I'm just letting them know on Zoom because they can't see you. I
That's
barely
okay.
see you.
I'll keep hiding over here. I kind of found more peace. I think COVID was a growth period for me. I mean, as much as I really missed my social contacts and stuff, what I came out of it was going, okay, I'm okay with myself. You know, I'm comfortable with myself. I like myself, and I didn't have, you know, and it helped me be at peace. You know, I didn't have yes, I had anxiety. I had lots of anxiety, but I was also calm and peaceful with myself. And I think that was a big move for me. So.
How about from folks online? I don't know if they can hear me, Mary.
Oh, anyone on the online want to share something, or how we define inner peace? Part of the distinction I think that we want to make is, you know, between a peaceful moment. A peaceful moment is like when you're sitting by a fire and you have your family, and it's comfy and it's quiet. It's a peaceful moment. You're watching a fire, or you have a candle lit, or, you know, it's those moments that are peaceful. Or you come home and it's quiet, and, you know, there's you and the cat, and it's peaceful, you know. And it's or you're sitting at the beach and you're watching a sunset, or you're driving home and you notice it's a beautiful day. And it's just that peaceful moment. But that's not really the same thing as inner peace, because that can be destroyed by someone calling you up to sell you something, or you know, you're watching your fire and it's beautiful, and you know, the dog jumps and almost singes his fur, or, you know, one of the kids comes running through and spills their drinks, or there's an argument in the next room stirring, or so. Those moments, those peaceful moments, they can be destroyed by just whatever else is going on around you, or something that's happening in the world. Mark?
I think Karen wanted to share.
Oh,
Yeah.
Karen,
I do have.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
This goes back to the inner peace thing. And I lost my husband unexpectedly 6 years ago. And I would say probably for 5 years, it was really, really tough, you know, but being in church, and I do devotions every morning. I have found inner peace now. And I feel like now God is using me to help others. And it's just, I can't explain it, but, you know, I have done things that I never thought I would do.
Right.
You know, since then. And so.
Yeah. Mark, you had a comment?
I do.
But he needs to come and get the mic first.
I appreciate you asking the question, but pairing it with the idea of hunger is what we're hungering for. Because I can think about times when I think, oh, I just can't catch a break. I just need a moment of peace. But I confuse that with, well, what is it? Validation? Is it security? Is it what is it? Right? What's getting in the way of having that moment of inner peace as well as a moment of peace?
Right.
And I appreciate putting that together with hungers. I don't know if you want to say more about that, or.
Yeah, because part of finding peace is knowing what can fill us, and what it is that we need within us like Karen, when you were saying, you know, like you spend time in your devotion and you have that connected sense of being connected to something, to God, and that fills you and it stays with you. And it's that piece, but it gives you that, you have that confidence. So sometimes our hungers can get in the way of our peace because we want something we don't have, or we can't find, or we can't identify. And so we're in this spin of nothing feels like a fit. Nothing feels like a fit. And then we start bopping around trying to fill the fit. And we tend to find all the wrong stuff first. I mean, you know, some days it's like, I really miss my kids. And instead I'm thinking, gee, maybe I'll buy them something on Amazon and send it to them. It's like, you know, it's like you're filling one hunger with a different thing that isn't really it. You know, it's just pick up the phone, you know, just pick up the phone. So, yeah, we tend to not always identify the right thing right from the start. But inner peace is destroyed and disrupted more by confusion or distraction or the pace, or not having taken time to reconnect and continue that connection with our God, or taking on unrealistic burdens. So it's inner peace is disrupted in a different way than just a peaceful moment. It's sort of like the difference between being joyful and being happy. You know, things can make you happy, but joy comes from something within you. So, you know, part of finding inner peace is looking around at your nest and saying, you know, what are the little bits and pieces of metal that I'm putting in here? These pretty shiny things that are making it very uncomfortable. But, you know, it's answering a hunger, but maybe not the right answer because we're not taking time to really identify the hunger. So, you know, it's a good journal question, you know, what is my hunger? And it varies from day to day. It can, but sometimes there's common threads. So taking time to just spend time with that, because when we identify the hunger, it's much easier to find the thing that's going to bring us to that place of fulfillment. You know, and it's sometimes it's like we can think experiences. Oh, I want to take that vacation, or I want to go to this restaurant, or I want to taste this food. You know, if you've ever watched, you know, like that kind of that hipster mentality of, you know, like going to this restaurant. Oh, did you ever see this restaurant? Oh, did you ever see this music? So it's always going to that next great thing that's just going to make their day. It's going to make their moment, and they're going to share that moment with everyone. It's like the moment is the moment is the moment. And it's just, but that's the thing. It's not the moment. So, but we do that. We search for these things that we can put inside of us, because it quiets the noise. It quiets the noise. I mean, I caught myself. Here's my example. I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling upset. I'm feeling frustrated, or I'm feeling overly tired, overly worked, and I've got worries, and I don't want to think about my worries, right? So I'm just going to listen to an audiobook. So I'm going to listen to this audiobook, and it's just a nice little, you know, happy little story. And I can live in that happy little story all day long while I'm doing my work, and while I'm doing my dishes, and while I'm, you know, breaking, and while I'm cleaning, and while I'm, you know. And so at the end of the day comes, and it's like I take out the earbud, and it's like I set it down. It's like I still have my worries, and I haven't thought about them at all, but they're still there. And now it's worse because I got to try to sleep. So how am I going to sleep? So the earbud goes back in. It's like I fall asleep listening to my audiobook. Okay. I'm like, I know this is backwards, upside down, and very wrong. And it was just like, I am laughing at myself. I'm like, Lord, I know I need to come to you in prayer, and I need to take all these worries, and I need to let myself feel them. I need to feel them in your presence, but I just don't want to feel them right now. So I'm going to listen to my ear. It's like, so I do this for like a few days, and pretty soon I'm thinking, I don't feel connected to my life. I have not connected to my life. I've been in this book. So what's going on in my life, and who am I, you know, and what am I doing? And, you know, where are we with all of this? It's just like, finally, you know, it's like the moment comes and the tears happen, and it's like, okay. But so I think I've got that under control, but, you know, that's where I go. And that's the tendency. That's the human condition. It's just, I don't want to feel that pain. And sometimes going to prayer brings us to pain because we have to feel it with God. It's like we're bringing it to God. Yeah, but we still have to feel it and be in that space, and we will avoid it. And so what happened to me is I was avoiding prayer. I was avoiding God because in that moment I would have to be with all of those other things, which honestly, when I finally got there, it was like, it was so healing. I was like, oh, that's so much better. It's like now I could cry, and it was, in the space where God could heal that and let me cry to God. And it was just like, I walked away like I'd been held by my mother, and it was like, okay, what was wrong with doing that? But that human part of us doesn't go there first. So, that's another thing that we do. And Jesus, it's like when I have this other quote in here, Jesus told his disciples, to go to the inner room. It's like, go to the inner room, but we avoid the inner room, and sometimes we don't feel that we have a place in the inner room. It's like, how do we get to the inner room? That's the other question. How do we get to the inner room with all this stuff going on? So, what does it feel like to inhabit that space of the inner room? We've all had those moments of being in that space. What does that feel like? Sometimes it's sort of like it's an act of stopping and just choosing to be nothing, and letting go and just letting our minds empty, that place of contemplation and surrendering to it. And the surrender, sometimes it's difficult. People who have a reaction to that word surrender. The surrender is kind of like you have this image of, being cuffed, you're surrendering, but surrender to me is like what I experience. It's kind of like a toddler who won't go to sleep, and you're holding them and they're like, their heads down and their feet are up, and then they're like this way and they're that way. And it's like, they won't, and you're trying to rock this toddler, and they're tired, and they just need to get to sleep, and they're fussing and they're this and they're that. And you're like, you're half an hour of this wrestling. And finally there's like, and they just fall asleep. And then they're limp and asleep in your arms, and you can just hold them, and it's kind of like that. And I thought about God wrestling with me as I'm trying to just listen to my story and stay out of this place where I don't want to go, and it's just kind of like that wrestling is finally, it's like, okay, I give up, I surrendered, and, then God can heal me, but God can't heal me if I don't do that. So it's making that time and choosing to enter into that space, and it's unknown space. We don't know what might surface in that space, and it can be a little bit frightening. So how do we dedicate time to that space, that inner garden where we meet God? Does anyone have a favorite way of doing that they'd like to share? What's your wisdom? I mean, I believe we have a collective wisdom sitting here. I'm sure we do.
I think like anything, when there's so much on the plate, you have to kind of schedule it, as awful as that sounds. Is it the first little bit in the morning before you start work, or is it that last little bit when you do put your phone away and stop scrolling that you can sense the quiet? But that's what I found I have to do. Like, always take a walk at a certain time before dinner, and then again fit in the prayer when we can.
Yeah.
I like to let my phone work. Yeah. Brett's getting his exercise today.
Thank you.
I like to let my phone work for me instead of against me. So in time. So if I'm sitting on the sofa in the morning before I get into the shower, I'll use my phone, and I have a meditation app, Richard Rohr, that I like to use, and I'll just work through that. So I know my phone is there, it's accessible, and I don't have to get up and look for my journal and all those things that I need to get to this space. So that's kind of one way I take 15 minutes to center.
Anybody else have anything they'd like to share?
Although I don't do this on a regular basis, and I would like to, is I like doing centering prayer and just being silent for 15 to 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Kathy?
And I think to your point of being silent is a hard thing for me. And it's just, I think I went to something at the Dominican Center or whatever, and it was one of those things, learning about different kinds of prayer. And I thought, okay, that's what I'm not good at, and so now if I go to adoration or sitting in my house or whatever, I just have to just sit and wait, because I usually don't open myself up to that. I'm so busy being conscious and deliberate, which is good. You also have to be conscious and deliberate, but sometimes it's just not being conscious and deliberate to not be doing anything or saying anything, just listening.
Right.
So. And I have to say, I have gotten some, only a couple times, but I've gotten some really direct messages. When I was just in a quandary over stuff, and I said, lead me, guide me, help me. And I just got this, that's okay, and it's like, okay, it works.
Yeah.
So.
It's a practice that can sustain us, but it is a difficult practice to do, like a real silent prayer. It does take practice. Because we have intrusive thoughts, it's always the intrusive thoughts, so it's kind of like as they come up, the idea is that we just kind of let them just filter away and just, I'm not going to focus on that right now. I'll get to it later. I'm not going to focus on that right now. And it takes, I think, I would hope that as I practice more, that I'll have less of that. But right now it's kind of like, yep, later. Yep, later, yep, later, sometimes yep, later the whole time. But then there might be just this moment where there's just like this little moment where it actually gets quiet and you just think, this that breath where it's just like, there you are. And here I am, here we are. And even if it's just like this little instant moment where you have this moment, this little moment of connection. And sometimes it can happen in a silent prayer, but sometimes it's just, you're driving home and you see something, a beautiful sunset. And it's just like, you're like, oh, it takes you by surprise. And it's that moment where you just feel a connection to everything that is. You the connection to God and all the beauty of creation. Or, it's just for a moment, and then you get home and you get the mail and you do this and you do that. And you're kind of, the moment's passed. But you can think back and remember that moment. We can remember that moment as real. And we know that moment is real and that it matters. And it connected us. We connected with God. And so even though we can't walk around throughout life in that moment of connection every single moment, we can say, but I know what that feels like. And I know that it's possible. And I know I can find my way back. So it's sort of becoming a student of those moments. And it's learning to recognize them and then expand them by remembering it, going back to it, at the end of the day and be like, yeah, I saw you there. And it was really nice. That night examine where you're thinking about your day and you're just to take a moment to acknowledge it and say, that was a real moment. And I appreciated being in it. And I know that you're here. Sometimes it's like, for me, it was in that moment where I finally put all of my things aside and it was like, that was like that surrender, and then the tears come, and it's just like, you feel the arms of God. And sometimes we have those deep moments of connection. And then there's all the other moments where it's just the day is happening. And it's just, so we have to go back and remember those moments. And once you remember those moments and know that they're true, and that's your truth, that is the time when the moment is chaotic and it's lost and it's out of control and you have no clue how to live through the moment. Like when you're going to the hospital with your son in a swimsuit and a cover up, and it's just like, when you get into that moment, you have these other moments that are there, and that this moment isn't all that is. This moment is happening in the context of a much greater reality, and it's kind of like nothing happens apart from the love of God. That's the reality. Nothing happens apart from the love of God. And so when we can ground ourselves in that, then the other moments, they have less power to just sway us everywhere and pull us in 100 directions and feel chaotic. Chaos will come, but there's this piece of us that we know is grounded deeply in Christ and is unshakable. And so that's why we take the time to do the practice, even when it seems like, as many days as we can, and as many moments as we can, and as life allows, because we are living a life. I like to listen to Jim Finley a lot, because he was in the monastery with Thomas Merton. He was a student of Merton, and he learned a great deal from him. But then he went on from there to live outside of the monastery, live a life in the world. So he has a really wonderful podcast. If you ever get the chance to, maybe some of you have listened to it. It's Turning to the Mystics, and he takes mystics. He goes through their writings. I put it on the back sheet. There's a connection to it. But he likes to talk about what they can teach us about this connection to God. But he does it in a way that is so gentle, and there's so much common sense to it. So I love to listen to him. But one of the things that he keeps coming back to is just being a student of this and learning to see it. And you just keep coming back to it, and you keep coming back to it. And it's always there. But yeah, he lived in the monastery, but now living in the world. So it's like the world, you got to create your own little monastery within the world. So whether it's driving in your car and that's your little chapel, and you can have some prayer time because nobody's talking to you and you can't be on your phone anyway, or supposedly. And it's like finding those moments when you're not able to live in a monastery to create those little sacred spaces for yourself, and whether maybe a prayer corner in your home or just moments. Even like standing in the grocery line, just take that. You're standing there doing nothing. It can be, looking at all of the people there and seeing it with God's eyes. But those little ways of living a contemplative life. So we talk about mindfulness a lot, what it is to be mindful. It's like to be aware in this moment. So if I'm being mindful right now, I'm thinking about what can I hear? What can I see? What do I taste? What do I smell? Who's in the room? What am I feeling? What am I sensing? This moment, not like the moment before and not the one I'm going to go to, but this moment right now, this moment, that's mindfulness. Now, if you take mindfulness one step further and say this moment with God, that's contemplation. So it's being mindful, but also in the contemplative presence of God. So I'm being mindful, but I'm contemplating, what does God see in this moment? Or how do I see it with God's eyes? Or what is God seeing right now in me? Or having the conversation with God about what I see, or recognizing that this is all God. It's created by God and an ongoing love that just keeps continuing to create it. So I'm mindful I'm in this moment, but I'm aware that if God stopped loving me, even for one instant, I would completely disappear from existence. And that's contemplation. So it's that appreciation. I know people who don't know God, and it's like they feel so lucky sometimes. Oh my gosh, I saw this beautiful sunset. I was so lucky. I was there at just the right moment. I'm like, I'm glad you're lucky. It's what, if you realize that sunset was a gift of love given to you, it means so much more. It's like, okay, I could wake up in the morning, there's a plate of food in front of me, and I'm like, wow, somebody made me breakfast. That is cool. I love this. There's food. I'm so lucky I found food. But if I know that my mother prepared that for me because she loves me and she made it exactly the way that she knew I would like it, now it's not just a plate of food I'm eating. This is love. Someone loved me enough. And this is love being poured out and given to me. So now I'm seeing it in a very different way because I'm seeing it because this is God's love. So the biggest sadness of not knowing and believing that there's a God is just not realizing how very loved you are in every single thing that you receive in life. So that's the contemplative piece. So that piece, we can do in any moment. It's just taking a different way of looking at it. Now, I will confess that when I've got a grandchild, two of them arguing and fighting and spilling things and things, it's just like, and my daughter's yelling at them and we're just trying to figure out and get through this moment and everyone's going to calm down soon, I hope, and then someone says a dog threw up and it's just like, oh my gosh, really, if that is not the moment that I'm going to think to contemplate, but I might think, oh dear God, save me, help me, get me through this moment, help me, please, make them all stop. So which piece of God are we, accessing? But it's always coming back to that piece. God has got this somehow. God has this somehow. God is holding it. And so the contemplation with the moment. Does anyone have any thoughts about what I'm talking a lot? So, Mark. Kathy, who's got the microphone? That's right here. Kathy, you've got it.
Mary, your comments about the breakfast, the plate of food, and the love being poured out, it was easy for me to make the jump to, as Catholics, what we talk about with the Eucharist. And I can recall being at a mass with 3,000 people at this national conference or more, and the local bishop is celebrating the closing mass, and it's been a mass, right? Like full, more than an hour, like not quite a Eucharistic or Easter vigil, but I mean, a very full mass, right? Singing and, everything just very animated. But it's in the moment just before he raises the host to say, this is the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world, that part in the mass. But he held that host and I got so clearly like he was contemplating it. Exactly what you were talking about with the breakfast. And that moment came back, that memory came back. I can still see where I was sitting in the arena, but it was like this moment of silence and stillness. And I don't know if other people were tuned in, but he obviously was very tuned in to what was in his hands. Yeah. Before he raised it. And all the more so than I was paying attention, right? This is the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world, that love poured out. And I really appreciate you emphasizing that about becoming a student then of those moments. What are those moments teaching us about the kind of inner peace we can have, right, and to be able to use those as touchstones. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Yeah, it is becoming a student of them. And I picked that up, was one of the things I picked up from Jim Finley, because first you notice it, but then you contemplating it. And what does it mean? It's not always, what is God saying to me? But sometimes it's, what does it mean? That the God is interacting with us in this way. What is the greater reality of that?
What do you mean by that?
Exactly.
It's like, if I see a beautiful sunset
Mhm.
and I recognize that God is in that moment and I feel the presence of God. So to become a student of the moment is to think, what is that moment about? You know, did God just want me to enjoy this? You know, did God just want me to notice that he's present? Or, you know, it's just, what does it mean? And for me, it comes back around a lot of times to, you know, just thank you for connecting with me because I was wandering out through my day, you know, or sometimes it's just feeling loved when the world doesn't feel like it's loving me much. You know, it's like knowing that I'm loved deeply by God, or that I'm just even connected, or just saying, I'm still here. You know, God's just letting us know I'm still here. So it's weaving all of those moments together so that it creates an understanding that we are always connected to God in all of these moments. And in the moments that we don't sense it and feel it and see it, when the sunset isn't beautiful, but, you know, God is still there. So does that answer your question?
I'm doing a Bible study right now, and we just finished a section on Isaiah. And for me, it triggered 40 years ago. I was going through a divorce, and I was separated from my 2 young children, and you know, I was very lonely. And I had subscribed to this monthly Bible study that came in the mail, and it was Catholic based, and I can't remember in God's Word or something like that, and it focused on Isaiah. And during that time frame, and daily when I read those readings, I felt God speak to me, you know, so clearly. He was there for me, and it was something that was one of those moments that I'll always remember. I mean, it was really a collective summer doing that, but that Isaiah. And so then now 40 years later, hearing that again, it triggered that memory. And so as I think about it, is I find oftentimes those moments when I'm really listening to God's word in the Bible, in the scriptures, that those are the things that give me a sense of peace. And, you know, and because I can connect back to that time when it really healed me well, and he was there for me. And so I've had a lot of other things throughout my life that have been as challenging, maybe not quite as challenging, but I always have that confidence that God is there for me, that his love for me is there always. And so, you know, it's that thinking and contemplating about whatever you're dealing with, whatever that moment is. So then I can appreciate sometimes when there's a just unbelievable sunset, and I'm thinking, thank you for this creation.
Yeah. Any other comments?
Fran has her hand up.
Fran? Oh, okay.
Yes, thinking about the sunsets. After my mother passed away, my father lived with me for 3.5 years. And we'd be out driving, and that's what he would say, look at the beautiful artwork God has given us today. And he'd say it that, just like that, and say, you know, you really need to notice this. And I never thought of him at those moments that he was being fully present with God.
Yeah. What a beautiful memory. That's lovely. Like God's artwork. Yeah. It's wonderful to look back on it now and recognize that he was having that moment.
Yes.
Even in what you're saying is that at the time you didn't really fully understand it. It was like, yeah, that's beautiful. But
yeah, now I know I can do it too.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's part of what it is to be a student of the moments. It's like we keep learning more from it. You know, there's more to unpack as time goes on. And I think sometimes the events in our life, you know, something that we didn't notice before becomes meaningful because it becomes relevant in a new way as we grow and learn and mature. yeah, I certainly go back and recognize moments that are more meaningful now than they were at the time. So. So contemplation is a really good way of staying in touch with the peacefulness and God's presence within us, even when we're in motion. When we're just living our day, we can be contemplative when we're doing chores, when we're getting dressed, when we're taking a shower, all of the things that we have to do. Sometimes, like life demands of us that we focus on other things, in our work or different things, but there's a lot of moments that can just be, it's just kind of like weaving that thread of contemplation through all that we do. And then there's other moments that we set aside very intentionally for just like a silent, prayerful moment where we just listen, or we practice Lectio, which is like listening to the word of God and then just contemplating that word for a little while and focusing on that to hear, what does God want to say to me through this piece? If we read scripture and then we take time to meditate on that, or a lot of, I'm sure, all of you have resources, many resources that you can go to and to listen to and to listen differently. And there's always something more because God is always teaching us something new. Sometimes it's like, well, what do you want to teach me today? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times as a spiritual director, I hear people say, when I hear it more than once, I kind of know I better listen, and I've experienced that too, where I'll hear something is similar and this is similar. It's like, I start to make these little connections. It's like, oh, this is important that I pay attention to this. And, but yeah, it's just keeping our minds focused on listening. It's a listening stance. But then there's other moments and there's busyness, those crazy moments that come. So one of the tools that I've found that's helpful, and I've had other people say that it's helpful for them, is it's what I call a we and us prayer. And it's sort of like, as you go through your day, everything that you do from the time you get up, you say, well, okay, we're going to go get a shower now. We're going to go have breakfast. And everything that you do, it's in the we us stance. And it's an interesting thing because it reminds you that God is always beside you and with you, in you, and lives through you. And so everything that we do, it's the we and the us. It's like, okay, we need to call, my son, or we need to get some work done today, or we need to deal with this issue, or we need to take care of this person, or, oh gosh, we need to do this errand, or, oh gosh, we said we would go and take this person to get groceries today. It's going to be long. So we need to get through that. But it's that we us kind of thing. And sometimes when we're having a dry spell where we just don't feel connected to God, it's a good way to just put ourselves back into that space of realization that we don't do anything just on our own. And the results of what we do can be the results of both of us together. It can feel less overwhelming. And at the same time, it keeps us from sin. Oh my gosh, it's really, really hard to lose your temper when you're doing the we us day. It's kind of like, okay, I'm going to just tell you what I think of you, but not right this minute. Because we don't talk that way. I talk that way, but we don't. So right now we're just going to smile and say thank you. But yeah, so we us, that's another way. And it tends to feel like more peaceful and joyful and less burdensome because we're not doing it alone. I've had to mow my own lawn for way too long in my life. And you know what? When we do the we us, it's a lot better. It really is. We still don't get straight lines. But hey, we do see more like little bugs and birds and nature things. We notice them more. And we're more grateful for them. Even the little mole that jumped up and scared the daylights out of me. Oh my gosh. I don't like little furry critters, So one day I was like just weeding and this mole just jumped up and it was like, I mean, I scared him. He scared me 10 times worse. I was just, of course, my first thought mouse, but it was mole. Yeah, I screamed, my neighbor laughed. Anyway, but yeah, contemplation can be fun. And sometimes I've noticed that I think Jesus has a real sense of humor, tells me some jokes, you know, he laughs at me quite a bit. So any other thoughts? Fran, you're laughing. Did you have something you wanted to say?
No, I'm just enjoying listening to the conversation.
Yeah. Oh, good.
God laughing with us and at us all day.
Yeah. He's pretty amused. I thought he must have got quite a good kick out of me listening to my stories, thinking everything would go away. You know, I was like, you just realize how futile it is. But it's so comforting too, just to say, yeah, I'm human. This is my humanity. But you knew that. You created it.
Well, and the other thing working for you, Mary, is God's got a lot of time on God's hands. So God can be patient.
He's very patient.
Here for you.
Yeah. Sandy, did you have something?
Well, I think about that. I think this is the medical term. I don't know, but the book compartmentalizing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't want to think about, this task that I have to confront somebody. So I'll just put it in that little door and lock it, and it'll stay in there forever. Well,
Oh, yeah.
it doesn't always stay in there forever.
No.
And, we've watched public figures do that. I do that. I know I do. I put things in a little, then you don't have to deal with them. But I think God's going to nudge us
Mm-hmm.
to deal with them.
Oh, yeah.
Because hard things, you can pray for them for a long time, but when God's ready, he's going to take care of them.
That is true. In God's time.
In God's time, not ours.
And like Mark said, God has so much more time than we have. And that's obvious by the time frame that God goes by. Yeah. Yeah, the patience is hard sometimes. Sometimes too, it's like I've noticed that is when something good happens, when you're doing this we us, it's like you could almost see him like waiting for you to notice. It's like waiting for you. It's like when you buy someone a present and you're waiting for him to open it, and it's just like, you're gonna like this. I know you're gonna like this. It's just like something good happens. It's just like, I think you were excited for me to have this moment. I feel the excitement. And I feel your excitement. It's not just my excitement. And it's like, this is exciting, yeah, even just, they have my cookies in stock. Yay.
Mary, when you talk about that, we ask one of the reflections that I read, not daily, but periodically, one of the men that writes it, he uses that in the context of the Holy Spirit. And when he first started doing writing for this group, it caught me off guard because he was saying we, and then I finally got the fact that he was really recognizing how much the Holy Spirit plays into the maybe tough issues that you deal with and all that kind of stuff. And I think he does work with maybe some prison ministry and stuff like that. And he just really talks about, that we're going to do this. And he frames it in the context of the Holy Spirit.
That's a nice way, and it keeps you humble too, because you realize you're not doing anything on your own, Where I first got this from, when it first came to me, when I first learned this, it was from the True Life in God series. And I don't know if any of you have come across that, but there's a mystic, her name is Wcisel Ryden, and she hears messages from God. And one of the things that what happened to her, she was writing a grocery list one day and the Holy Spirit took over and started writing to her. And she didn't even believe in God at this time. So it was it's an interesting story. If you ever want to look it up, it's True Life in God, you'll find it. But Jesus asked her to practice this as a way of prayer. And I thought, wow, that's beautiful. So I picked it up. It's been about 20 years and on and off, I would practice it in my life. And so, yeah, it's a beautiful prayer. So, yeah, but that's a good, it's a beautiful, her writings are beautiful. They're just beautiful. And she has taken them to Rome and had some credentials assigned to them. So it's not just flaky stuff.
A grocery list.
A grocery list. Yeah. She's writing a grocery list. Yeah. So. I got so excited, I lost my place. Sometimes we think of contemplation in terms of beautiful things, but sometimes when things are not beautiful, we don't always recognize the moment as something where we want to contemplate God's presence in it. You know, like you go outside and it's a really beautiful spring day and you smell the cut grass and the sun's shining and all of this, and you smell your trash can and you're like, yeah, no, not that. But then you think there's stuff decaying in there, and that's part of creation, and goodness knows where would we be if things did not decay. It's just all of creation is of God and is given to us by God. But it's contemplating suffering or difficult things in our life. And just like we do with the beautiful things, and in that sense of feeling loved and at Thanksgiving, we contemplate illness, death, divorce, dysfunction, all of this kind of suffering. How do we contemplate that and see that in the hand of God? It comes back to that whole idea of all things happening. Nothing happens apart from the love of God. So we look at, war, and we look at, famine, we look at suffering and the terrible injustices, and we say, how does this happen? Even, how do we find peace in the midst of all of that? Because we all know we can find peace when the sun sets beautiful. So how do we sit with that? And so when we hold those broken pieces, it's how do we hold those, Because inner peace is not impacted by what's happening outside of us or in the world. Inner peace is the peace that the world cannot give. So it's not dependent on things being beautiful and good. Things can be very hard, and we can be in the midst of suffering, and we can still have that inner peace. One of the best lessons in this that I ever learned was from a young woman. She was only 18 and she was dying. She had cancer, and I had been walking the journey with her for a few years, and she was nearing the end of it. And I've spent quite a bit of time visiting her up at the hospital and with her mom and her family. And one time I asked her, I said, because she was saying she had pain. I said, what do you do? When in those moments of intense pain, what do you do? How do you get through those moments? And she said, I just, she was so weak. She says, I just be very, very still. And I thought, that's it, is to be very, very still. She said, because then it's quiet. It's like this entering into that stillness where God can come in and heal us in the moment. It's like, for me, it's like I didn't want to go to the place of pain, not even in prayer. It was just like, no, not today, not now, maybe later, and it's just like, but it's like to allow God to come into our pain, we have to be courageous enough to face it, but maybe not ever face it without God beside us. And that's okay. I don't think we should, and not our guilt either, neither one. We should always face it with God beside us, because that's where God can heal us. And so ways of inviting God into the pain, it's just, sometimes it's just to sit and feel the pain and say, Lord, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at this pain. Look how much pain I'm feeling right now. Not, could you please fix this? Could you fix this? Could you fix this? It's like, just look at me, look at my pain, see me, you know, and sometimes it's putting ourselves in scripture and saying, I'm the woman on the path as you walk by, you know, cast your gaze upon me, see me here, you know, my arm outstretched to touch your robe. It's like, this is me, I'm that person right now. And it's like putting ourselves in that place of intense pain and allowing God to be in that place with us. Because it's like a mother with a child, and the child is crying and they're in pain, and she sees that they fell down, they skinned their knee and they're bleeding, but they're wandering around the house and they won't come to her. And she's got the band-aids and she's got the hug and she's got the popsicle, and it's like, but the kid will not come and let her comfort them. So it's like they're wandering. It's like, no, don't touch it, don't touch it, don't touch it, don't, you know, it's like that. Is we need to allow ourselves to be the wounded child and allow ourselves to trust, to enter into that space where God can heal us, and expect that God will come and meet us there. You know, maybe not fix everything. God, I don't think, and you know, protects us from maybe nothing, but sustains us in all things. So, you know, we can be sustained even when we're not protected. You know, if God doesn't protect us from it, God will sustain us. It's going to be one or the other. And we have to trust that. And so, and comfort's part of that. You know, God will comfort us. And that gives us courage. It makes us strong enough to live in this world right now as it is. We're all still loving people in the midst of this world. And that's because we are connected to something greater and stronger. It's a lot to take in. So when we take in these moments, when we connect with God, or even the moments of intense suffering, it's like sometimes we need to look at them and say, well, how is it shaping me? You know, not what's happening, but how is it changing me, changing my heart, changing the hearts of those around me. And that's the piece that we bring to God. You know, how is it shaping me? What am I becoming because of it? Am I becoming bitter and angry and miserable? Or am I becoming understanding and wise and gentle and loving? Am I more likely to try to be light because of all the darkness? Or am I going to just go and hide from the darkness and create this little like black hole inside myself of more darkness? It's part of the contemplation is, God, how are you shaping me right now? You know, sometimes we see things happening and it makes no sense. You know, I look at some of the stuff my kids have gone through and I think, wow, you know, at the time I just thought, I don't know if this is terrible. You know, I can't watch this. And then I look at them like, boy, they're strong, you know, and they're confident and they're kinder and they're understanding because of who they've had to be and what they've had to come through. You know, and I think that's how God shapes. How does a moment shape our hearts? So it's a way of seeing what God sees. It's that contemplative learning stance, that curiosity, and all of that brings deeper inner peace because we're not giving God a laundry list of things he needs to change so we can be happier and more peaceful. We can be peaceful. Once we learn, we can be peaceful anyway, because we are held in the loving hand of God. Any other thoughts? Or we can just take a moment to allow thoughts to surface and just be still. We can do that too. I think, what time is it? We got about 15 minutes. Let's take just a few minutes. I have a quote here from Julian of Norwich. She was a mystic and an anchoress in the 14th century, and her writings and her quotes are beautiful, and I'm sure you've all seen some of her quotes. But what I'd like to do is just take a moment and just prayerfully listen to this reading taken from Julian's showings. And then what we'll do is we'll just take maybe like 3 or 4 minutes of just silence to let that just sink in. We won't do a full Lectio with 4 readings, but I'll read it once at the beginning. Yes? Oh, question?
No, I'm sorry, I waited too long.
Oh, that's okay. We can go back. I'd
no,
love to
that's
hear
okay.
from you, Jose.
No, I think I can, from what I have to say, we can go straight to where you were because it might be a little bit of a bridge. But
Okay.
yeah, in my case, I do feel lately, just for lots of family issues, health issues, and so on, very, very overwhelmed. But also because I'm a professor, so I deal with other people as well. So I think one of the greatest problems we have today is this popular notion that is worrying me a lot. It's taking a very big hold, especially on the young. The false dichotomy between religion and spirituality. That people are saying you can be spiritual without being religious. In what they're really saying is you can feel good about yourself without having to go to church, basically. But it's a kind of it's a very false dichotomy that doesn't understand that the roots of religion is spirituality. It's the Latin religare, which means to reunite us with God. Mm-hmm. And with a spirit. So you cannot have spirituality without a spirit. Yeah. Nor can you have the religare without any kind of discipline for disciplining your spirit to meet the spirit. Mm-hmm. And that's why we have these kind of different spiritualities, even within the church. Franciscan spirituality, Ignatian, Dominican. It's the same spirit with different paths or different disciplines of how to connect, relate to the spirit. But the essence is in spirituality is the spirit.
Right.
But finding that time and that moment in the middle of this world today to realize that especially through baptism and the reality that we are with that spirit, it can be very challenging today.
Mm-hmm. It is. I think, I'm seeing a lot of the same things that you're saying. I'm seeing that with our younger people. And I think religion is an expression. It's like we're spiritual, and religion is sort of, it allows us a way of entering into that space, that sacred space with God. So it gives us language, and it gives us a way of entering into that relationship. You know, for us, as Catholic, it's sacrament, but it gives us a way of being in community and sharing with others along the path and the journey that we're on. And it's so religion has a very powerful place, but to have spirituality without religion, I don't know if that's completely possible, because even if you feel that you don't have religion, chances are, if you're really deeply spiritual, you're going to have some kind of a practice that you live out of, and a way of relating to God and coming to meet with God. And that is religion. So, exactly. You know, we have a path that's been handed down to us by those who have gone before us and created traditions and ways of doing this that are deeply meaningful. And I think maybe what we're seeing is that it's kind of like you have a commemorative bench in the park, and it's there because, you know, when your father died, you put that bench there so that everyone could be reminded of him. And it was very, very important. And everyone in the community knew him, and everyone would sit on that bench and remember how he used to walk in the park. And it was very important to the community. And then over time, people forget why the bench is there. And over time, people just see a bench and they don't realize the meaning of it and why it's there. And I think in some ways, you know, the people have lost, they see all of the ritual and they see the tradition, but they've lost touch with the deep meaning of it. And they're so many times they find their way to it in one way or another, because if the spirit is active, the spirit is active, you know, but it's hard. It's hard to see this splintering again. But yeah, it's spiritual and religion, they go together. It's how we talk with God. So at least that's my experience. But yeah, if we could take a moment and just let's let ourselves be quiet and prayerful, and just make ourselves comfortable in our seats. We'll feel our feet on the floor. We'll feel our breath. We'll take a deep breath as we breathe in all of God's goodness. Breathe in the spirit of love, and breathe out the distractions and the worries. I'm going to read this little bit of Julian. She talks about what was revealed to her, and she says, "At the same time, the Spirit showed me a tiny thing the size of a hazelnut, as round as a ball and so small I could hold it in the palm of my hand. I looked at it in my mind's eye and wondered, what is this? The answer came to me. This is everything that has been made. This is all creation. It was so small that I marveled at it, that it could endure. Such a tiny thing seemed likely to simply fall into nothingness. Again, the answer came to my thoughts. It lasts, and it will always last because God loves it. Everything, all that exists, draws its being from God's love. I saw that the little thing has three properties. First, God made it. Second, God loves it. And third, God keeps it. Its ongoing existence depends on God. We need to comprehend how small and inconsequential creation is compared to God, who was never created, but simply is. When we perceive the nothingness in reality, we find God there. This is why our minds and souls are often restless and uncomfortable, because they rely on things that are so small, which can offer no real rest or security. When we willingly, lovingly detach our minds from the world around us, we have the one who is all, and we find rest for our spirits. At the same time, the Spirit showed me a tiny thing the size of a hazelnut, as round as a ball, and so small I could hold it in the palm of my hand. I looked at it in my mind's eye and wondered, what is this? The answer came to me. This is everything that has been made. This is all creation. It was so small that I marveled it could endure. Such a tiny thing seemed likely to simply fall into nothingness. Again, the answer came to my thoughts. It lasts, and it will always last, because God loves it. Everything, all that exists, draws its being from God's love. I saw that the little thing has three properties. First, God made it. Second, God loves it. And third, God keeps it. Its ongoing existence depends on God. We need to comprehend how small and inconsequential creation is compared to God, who was never created, but simply is. When we perceive the nothingness in reality, we find God there. This is why our minds and souls are often restless and uncomfortable, because we rely on things that are so small, which can offer us no real rest or security. When we willingly, lovingly detach our minds from the world around us, we have the one who is all, and we find rest for our spirits. Amen.